So as we open up the portal here and allow people in live, I want to say welcome everybody to this week's Business Unusual. I'm Joe Campolo, and my co-host is Peter Klein. We've been doing this since COVID lockdown started, and what we really wanted to do was provide a resource, a weekly resource to the business community to sort of track progress in the economy and in key sectors each week. Each week we've had people from critical sectors and thought leaders and industry leaders in those sectors join us, and it's been really greatly received. And we appreciate the overwhelming support that we've gotten from the business community for this. This week we're really happy to have a technology-based episode. And we have Michael Chiang. He's a tech entrepreneur in residence, which I love the AIR program. I think it's great at the Small Business Development Center at Stony Brook as well. And Phil Rugile, who's the director of LaunchPad Huntington, and LaunchPad has been a super exciting project here on Long Island, and we're really excited to dig deeper into that with you guys. And Peter, I just want to start with you. So we're what are we 2 weeks away? 2 weeks away from the election.
They're calling it the most important election of our generation or our time, and I suspect that's fairly accurate. And it's I'm not sure if it's just the election or perhaps it's the coming into winter time and the potential effect that the coronavirus may have on the United States and other places around the world. But it does seem that the market participants are basically looking for stimulus from the government as their savior, and that's what the situation today is, and we're waiting to see if indeed they will be able to come together. I heard Wolf Blitzer called out Speaker Pelosi and basically said, let's get something done. The people need the money. But this speaks to this whole issue of an economy on support. This will be the sixth of the coronavirus stimulus programs, and clearly, yes, we need them. However, what impact does this spending, this debt-infused spending, have on the long-term viability of our economy? These are the questions that I'm grappling with and looking for opportunities on the investment spectrum, given those economic undertones.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great party. So social issues aside, we as business leaders and entrepreneurs, irrespective of what the policymaking party is in power, we have to find ways to move forward and make money, no matter what the environment, right? That's really and truly what it's all about. And that's that's where technology, I think, is going to play such an important, critical role moving forward. The market will react to efficiencies, but what will that really look like? I mean, look at Zoom, right? So I was in the video conferencing world in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that industry couldn't break a market cap of $1 billion no matter how hard it tried. Just couldn't do it. We tried. Nobody could do it. Now nobody could think about a future where Zoom meetings are not a part of it, right? Because they've bred so much efficiency. And the question for entrepreneurs, and especially the tech sector, is what are we going to do with all that extra time we're now got on our hands, that we're not sitting in our cars in traffic, and we're able to really be much more productive. And that's where I want to open the conversation to Michael and Phil. Michael, I'll start with you. So you've been involved in some pretty exciting projects. You're an entrepreneur in residence. Why don't you talk a little bit about that program first? Because I think that's an incredibly important program run out of Stony Brook, but it's really run out of most incubators and things like that. But talk about that and how you got involved in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Joe, and thank you for having me on this program. Big fans of what you guys are doing. So I'm an entrepreneur in residence at the Stony Brook University Small Business Development Center. It's a fancy title for essentially what I'm doing is I'm advising and becoming like a champion for early early stage founders or new founders who are working on tech startups, building new apps, building new websites, building new platforms, or anybody who has a business, is an entrepreneur, and just wants to leverage technology to enhance the business. So we've really helped, we do a ton of work at the Sbdc office. I kind of focus on technology, and then we have advisors who are focusing on like retail sectors, manufacturing. We have advisors from various industries. So we bring forth our own knowledge to kind of really, back these entrepreneurs coming into our office to seek help and seek advice.
And how do you get the funding? So where does the funding come from for your guys' programs? How does that work?
So we're funded by both New York State and the SBA, so the Small Business Administration. They're kind of like the back is, behind the Small Business Development Center. So it's a national program. We have Sbdc offices in all major states across the U.S. And the Stony Brook one is one of the special ones, I think, not just because I'm there, but because we're partnered with a leading, university. So a lot of the work we do, we partner both with the university and resources across, the Sbdc offices across the U.S. So we have a lot of resources behind us. Yeah,
that's great. We're going to have a lot of fun unpacking that today, because a lot of good stuff there. Phil, want to welcome you to the show. It's good to have you. Talk about LaunchPad, right? So LaunchPad is something that right now has a renewed vitality and importance here on Long Island. So talk about it.
Yeah, thanks, Joe and Peter. Great to be on this, first off. And hopefully people will be able to take away some interesting insights between Michael and myself. One thing I would like to say, first off, by the way, that I've done a lot with Michael and the Sbdc at Stony Brook. And I got to say, it is probably one of the more progressive and impactful offices of its type in our region. So, I've always encouraged people to reach out to them for whatever their needs are. So I just wanted to make a plug for you, Michael. But LaunchPad is now in its 6th year and was opened originally as a very focused technology startup workspace, not an incubator per se, because an incubator implies sort of more formal programming than what we provide, but it was a co-working space. What's actually evolved, interestingly, is the concept of a co-working space. We've kind of blended it with some of the aspects of an incubator, but just in a very informal way. So startups and entrepreneurs and even some established companies that have remote workers that just need to be in a better environment in their home are come in. And what's happened is it's turned out to be a combination of technology-oriented startups with marketing startups, with nonprofits, with Amazon sellers. It's a really interesting mix of companies, which has allowed it, I believe, to thrive and become the only one of its type that has succeeded on Long Island, really outside of a campus, a university campus. And so we help these companies just by giving them advice when asked, or through making connections in our network. Our network is quite large now. We communicate via a newsletter that goes out based on my state of mind, once a week or sometimes twice a month. But it does go out to quite a few people, and in that I try to capture what's going on here, what's going on with sponsors, what's going on with our tenants specifically, and what's going on in the world news-wise that is relevant to being an entrepreneur. And so we actually grew that list. Interestingly, a little bit of history. That list actually grew. I inherited the Accelerate Long Island list years ago. And because I was an entrepreneur in residence with them. And when we transferred over to Huntington, and Accelerate became part of the New York Seed Fund, actually, and their territory expanded, we kind of took that on and tried to grow it and integrate it with our network. So it's a really nice group of people. But at the end of the day, we are a space that is here because of corporate sponsorship. companies that think what we're doing is the right thing to do to support a startup ecosystem, as well as those who want to reach that network with people for whatever reason, to better understand what's going on, to maybe get new clients. Peter, you've been a sponsor here over the years.
Very much so, and very proud of the work that you guys have done in Huntington and for Long Island in general. I mean, there's a lot of young folks that you've mentored that get their spark there and go on to perhaps other great things. This is part and parcel to the old notion of stopping the brain drain, keeping our assets here on the island.
Absolutely, and that's a big part of it is creating an environment where people feel supported, so they stay. So we've been very successful in that. The pandemic has changed things quite a bit. We used to do anywhere from 2 to 3 live events a week, and that obviously is no longer happening. And we don't know when that will ever pick up again. We're doing our first, make a plug for November 12th at 1 p.m. We're doing our first live Zoom event, branded as LaunchPad, with People's United Bank and St. Joseph's College, and with a keynote address by the Suffolk County Commissioner of Labor, and then with a panel discussion after that. So that'll be our first time of going into that area, and we're really looking forward to that because it's been a long time since we've had our group together in any form, But at the end of the day, we're surviving. We're getting new tenants that don't want to commute to New York, that want to be in an environment with other entrepreneurs. And, we're optimistic actually that this is going to create a whole new opportunity for the region and for a co-working space like ours.
Yeah, it's great. I want to just pile up a little bit on the Small Business Development Center for 2 seconds. So people may or may not know, prior to me starting this firm, I was president of a tech company. We did voice, video, and web conferencing. We sold it in 2006. And one of the people I knew was Judy McAvoy, who was very, very active with the Small Business Development Center. She's since passed away, but she was a great friend. And she introduced me to the center. And I gave a presentation there. Ronnie Rosen, who's still there and still a great friend, invited me to give a presentation. And I met a bunch of great clients that are still clients and friends here 14 years later. It really is one of the best kept secrets on Long Island. And Michael, I want to turn to you. So here we are, right? We're always a bunch of old guys trying to figure out how to keep young talent here on Long Island. And here you are, a super young, talented guy who is decided to stay on Long Island. So why? What is it that you see about your opportunity here that excites you? Because a talented guy like you has a lot more opportunities than we do.
Yeah, well, thank you, Joe, for the amazing, sharing the love about the Sbdc. And Ronnie is amazing. So, kudos to her for all she does. Long Island Tech is super exciting right now. Even before COVID started, having decided to kind of embark on my next journey on the East Coast here is because of the people. I think the community is just ripe for innovation. I think people are hungry, and I think more than ever the amount of resources that are available for an entrepreneur to tap into is finally being built in place, like the ecosystem, right? Guys like Phil, who, by the way, is this as synonymous as Long Island Tech or the startup community. Folks like him help create this kind of structure for an early entrepreneur or a young entrepreneur to come in and be able to have an idea, have a vision, come to a pitch event throughout a weekend, learn how to build, learn how to get customers, learn how to talk to customers, and just meet folks who want to join him or join her on their amazing journey. So long story short, I think it's just finally a time where a lot of key elements that kind of support a startup community are in place in Long Island Tech, and being part of the university is a huge benefit. Stony Brook has so many talented individuals that are part of the university, whether as teachers, employees, or whatnot, or just scientists that are available. The kind of angel investors on Long Island right now, the VC money. There's enough capital behind to kind of support new startups, as well as having events like Pitch Nights that we're running with the Stony Brook Sbdc, events that Phil we're running and probably still running at LaunchPad, I think this is what is going to really propel Alon Tech to like the next level. So it's just super exciting times and really happy to be here.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about younger generations, but I love hearing exactly, what's going on. So Phil, the question that I guess is the 800-pound gorilla on Long Island, right? For at least 30 years is here we have this spine of high tech, really powerhouse, Brookhaven National Lab, Stony Brook University, Cold Spring Harbor Lab, super high net worth individuals here on Long Island, and we can never seem to get out of our way in trying to collaborate all of those resources. So what do you see? Why do you think that is? And what do you see that's different now and that's going to help move that all forward?
Yeah, I was afraid you'd ask this question. It's all, you described it very accurately. There's been too many fiefdoms on Long Island, too many walls between different parties for a very long time. And what's interesting, I think, is over the last, and I'm going to say it started, talking about Accelerate Long Island again, it started to change right about the time that Accelerate Long Island came into play, which was built by a consortium of parties, of Brookhaven National Labs, Stony Brook, Cold Spring Harbor Labs. All those that you mentioned actually came together with the LIA and others to create this new entity, and that was the first time that I ever saw sort of a united front to solve a problem. And so I give a lot of credit to Mark Lesko, who was the original director there, and others for going down that path and really starting a new conversation. It didn't make it perfect, but it brought in. I wouldn't be here today probably if it wasn't for Accelerate Long Island. It was the first time I actually talked to a group of people who I felt really, had their head and their heart in the right place and were willing to collaborate. And that made a big difference. And so that's now evolved. And I'll give you one example of how it's changing for the better and where there's a huge opportunity going forward in terms of job creation and technology and manufacturing innovation. And that's the pending offshore wind projects. That is an area where, a number of entities have had to come together to start looking at what that opportunity is for the region and come up with plans and roadmaps for how we're going to succeed and get our piece of the pie, because a project where you're talking about potentially 10,000 jobs over the next 15 years, if not more actually, because we now have a third project that's up for approvals and site selection. There's been a really interesting coming together of entities, again, Suffolk Community College, Stony Brook University, Farmingdale College, myself and others that have even the labor unions, building trades. There's tables being created with these people who probably never would have spoken years ago. And now it's a really concerted effort to identify everything from how do you build a workforce? What's the training center look like? What's the supply chain, which is where I'm focused on? What's the supply chain for offshore wind, and how do you get into it? And what do you need to do to prepare your manufacturing, your service to meet the needs and make some money from this, right?
So Phil, so sorry to interrupt you, Phil, but are you talking about the BP Equinor joint venture project?
Yeah, well, so you've got two right now. You've got Ørsted out east, and then you've got Equinor off of Long Beach, and there's a third now that Vineyard Wind is making a bid on off of Montauk, and what's happening here is these entities are trying to figure out how to get into the community development side of things. And that's opening the door for conversations with people like me so that we can start, we can start having conversations about what has to happen within the manufacturing realm, with the technology realm. There's a lot, drone technologies, for example, hugely important component to offshore wind farms, right? So, you send the drone out in all sorts of weather to do site inspections and whatnot, much safer than sending people. And we have drone manufacturers on Long Island that are preparing for this and are innovating and are looking at new ways to build the drones. It's really actually pretty exciting. It's long-term though, you gotta be patient. And that's one of the things that's happening too.
And it's sustainable. And that's the other thing about it, is that we're not building an infrastructure that is likely to go, south in 30 years. This is going.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's kind of, that's an example of how I think the region has changed, and also now partnering a little bit more with Albany than we used to on some of these things. Again, you've got the manufacturing extension program at Stony Brook, which is funding opportunities for manufacturers. There's an Albany equivalent of that, of an MEP office up there. They're very interested in certain aspects of offshore wind because they have steel manufacturing still up there. People don't know it, but they do. And we have all sorts of other, we have Department of Defense manufacturing down here that can offer all sorts of products into offshore wind. It's a high-tech environment. It's a really interesting play.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, here on Long Island, and what we've learned over the course of all of our things here is how critical infrastructure spending over the next few years is going to be to really help the Long Island region. And I think last year we had Diane Hatton, who's the project manager for the Electron Ion Collider project going on at Brookhaven National Lab. And that's going to bring $1.5 billion in infrastructure spending over the next 10 years, which is super important revenue to have. So Michael, let's talk. So we definitely want to make sure, as Peter said, that we don't have a massive brain drain here on Long Island. We keep young talent here. So talk a little bit about the Entrepreneur in Residence program. How did you learn about it? How did you qualify for it? How can others get involved in it? What is it all about? It's super exciting. Talk about it a little.
Sure, yeah. So the Entrepreneur in Residence program, ultimately I'm acting as an advisor, right? So I'm coming in as an advisor, bringing back my experiences as an entrepreneur to my clients and the startups that I'm working with through the Sbdc. So a little bit about myself. I previously, started a few startups, but in particular, a company called FitBark. You mentioned pet tech earlier. So one of my companies were in pet tech. We were building ultimately Fitbit for dogs. And the whole premise was we wanted to learn as much as we can, like data about animals, making sure we're doing enough for our dogs, because our dogs, they love us. They're so excited to see us every time, but they can't tell us that they're feeling bad or they're feeling a little bit sick or they're a little bit uneasy. And that is what, we're trying to do with FitBark. And previously I launched, various other startups, matchpuppy.com, a kind of community builder, community website for, local dog play days. So you can meet somebody nearby who, can watch after your dog or not, trying to build a community around dog ownership. And then most recently, I launched a company called Joyride, which is a trivia game you play doing your Uber rides, bringing back the Cash Cab popular show, but for today's Uber world. So all my experiences are around kind of product development, whether it's mobile apps, online platforms, online websites, and just taking all my knowledge about, starting a startup and then kind of sharing that with the entrepreneurs that I'm meeting. So that's ultimately, my role, at Stony Brook, as well as my role for Long Island Tech. And then, partnering with guys like Phil, doing pitch events, pitch competitions. I think, to kind of go into how do we retain young talent on Long Island Tech instead of like going to the city or going to somewhere else. I think it's having these, amazing pitch nights with awards, with judges, and just being able to kind of highlight, innovation, highlight the ability to just come in and pitch your crazy, wild idea and having people support you or give you feedback, right? That is ultimately how I see Long Island Tech, going forward. But lastly, also, I think it's a lot to do with having the ability to kind of older entrepreneurs who have kind of done it, who have been there and, being failed before or built something. They are also now, there's a kind of a generation of seasoned entrepreneurs in Long Island that's kind of been there and done that. And it's amazing to have their support on our community for entrepreneurship. So they're kind of guiding the younger entrepreneurs that I'm working with, you know, guys like Phil and such.
Yeah, Michael, it's very interesting because I see that the fact that you have this cadre of older, seasoned entrepreneurs, maybe they're at LaunchPad or wherever, they're helping the younger college student sort of entrepreneur with an interesting tech exposure. In the same token, I think that there's a mandate for Stony Brook and for other institutions to make sure that they are serving in, you know, the young high school students who are interested in technology. You know, I'm fortunate to have gone to a specialized high school in the city that focused on science and math, and that allowed me to work very hard and to go to events on Saturday afternoons in the city. There was a place called Junior Academy of Sciences, and those researchers were there volunteering their very busy time to help young high school students develop their, it was called Westinghouse at the time. Now it's called the Regeneron Science Talent Search Award. But I think we need more of that. We used to do a good deal of that on Long Island. There was a big effort at the Setauket Three Village School District. There has been some teachers there and some leaders there that really took the bull by the horns. And Long Island has had some very impressive young people coming through with these innovative projects. That's the spark that then you could then take to the next level. Stony Brook could be involved in that and then move it forward.
Absolutely. And just to jump on that real quick, Peter, you know, I think starting early and exposure is probably the best thing we can do for our younger generations. I think, you know, going a little bit, you know, I'm not that old, but when I first got my exposure, I was in high school, mentioning high school early, you know, and I remember my first kind of amazing moment with consumer technology was when YouTube first launched. You know, I was in my AP computer science class, or, you know, Java class, and then we were all playing, you know, remember those free addictinggames.com, nobody's really paying attention in class. And then suddenly I remember looking across, and I had a fellow student, friend of mine, pull up the site, and he was just playing videos, random videos of people, you know, recording the cats. This is when YouTube first launched. So this was like the magical moment for me. So I think this is what we need to do, is just create more magical moments and get younger exposures as early as possible, because that is where our brains go like, wow, if anybody can do that, I can do that. What can I build, right? And that's where the ideas start coming forth.
Agreed.
Yeah. So a necessary stakeholder in all of this are investors, right? Investors are critical to doing what we need to do. And I want to hear from you guys. Michael, I'll stick with you, and then Phil, I want to hear from you. And Peter, you can weigh in as well. Is we always seem very challenged to be able to get investors really focused on Long Island. There has been the Long Island Angels Networks, the Capital Alliance, all these things that, you know, but really the dollars have been difficult. So Michael, when you started your companies, talk about your experience in trying to fundraise and what that was like, and what you're seeing now in terms of dollars available for, you know, for startups.
Yeah, I think one thing I definitely want to mention is a key component to kind of my success, or what's helped me as an entrepreneur, was when I first started up, you know, didn't know anything what I was doing. And like everybody else, just kind of finding my way as we went along. And it was the guidance of the seasoned entrepreneurs that were available to me, you know, whether it's through friends or within my circles, just asking for help, and then just having people actually just, you know, more than happy just to help me. I think that kind of, you know, give forward, or, you know, give more mentality is kind of a huge success in the, you know, US startup community. It's kind of what driven success, especially out West, right, in Silicon Valley, just kind of just helping others and advising others, right? Doing what you can to connect people together. For example, if I had, you know, if I needed an introduction to somebody who could help me with a supplier issue, I would reach out to you, Joe, and then, you know, you connect me. I think this is kind of like connecting the dots and bringing people closer together. It's one of the keys. And then secondly, you know, as an early entrepreneur, I didn't have a lot of education on starting a tech company. And what I did was we applied for my company FitBar to accelerator programs like Techstars, who's kind of one of the leaders in the US for accelerators. And accelerator in general is just kind of I like to call it an MBA program on steroids for a startup. Most of the cases, it's a 3-month duration, or it's a limited time duration where selected startups who apply and get admitted, usually a batch of, let's say, 5 to 10 companies. And then the accelerator company would invest a certain amount of capital into the startup, obviously retaining some kind of, equity into it, but also kind of really propelling the startup to the next level, right? Combining advisors, mentors, guiding them, making introductions, getting letter of intent for potential customers and helping them actually build the product. And at the end of the 3-month program, there's kind of a demo day where you pitch it in front of a group of investors and ideally try to, raise enough money to just keep the company moving forward. So accelerator programs, I'm a huge fan of them. And I think now more than ever, I've started seeing even the last year, there's been more and more programs out on Long Island for accelerators. And one in particular, down in Southampton is a company called the Spur. They're kind of a co-working space as well as incubator. And Ashley Heather, the guy who runs it there, he's an amazing, seasoned entrepreneur. And his whole vision was to, let's keep talent in Long Island, right? Don't just keep, if you go to school, you grew up in Long Island, and then you end up building your company in the city or even outside of New York, right? His whole vision, like many of us here, is to retain the talent. So just building programs to help young generations, pitch competitions, getting feedback, building accelerator programs, getting investors to speak to entrepreneurs early on. I think this is kind of, part of the secret sauce.
Yeah, and Phil, I'll turn to you. So as well as I do, capital investment here has been a challenge for startups. Do you see? I'm curious as to what you think that the reason is, and do you see it getting better now that there's more of a focus on tech because of COVID?
It's been problematic for a long time, and because it's been pockets. So there've been some effective angel investment activities, and then there's been other groups that have been kind of dormant, and it's kind of been all over the map. Not really cohesive, not a cohesive regional approach, which kind of goes back to your other question earlier about, why don't we play well together? What I'm seeing though, which I think is a really interesting trend, is especially with the fact that we're doing more things like pitch events now, to Michael's point about the value of those. It's interesting because in many cases, the awards that are going out through these pitch events are coming from regional businesses, not necessarily investors. So for example, I did one at the Wang Center at Stony Brook last year. That was the award. It was a $10,000 award. It was great. It was coming from Bridgehampton National Bank. I'm seeing more and more activities like that. We tried to, at LaunchPad, we ran for 3 years, we ran a mini version of the Techstars program that Michael's talking about called a Startup Weekend, which is a consolidated, hyper-focused 3-day or actually 2-night, 3-day event to get entrepreneurs exposed to the Techstars curriculum and understanding what it is to build a business plan, to take an idea and put it on paper, get it structured, and then pitch it to a panel of judges. And that was so much fun. I mean, unfortunately, Techstars has changed that program, and we're not running it anymore for various reasons. But when we did it, it was fabulous. It was a great way to expose entrepreneurs to that thought process. And once you get once you understand what the process is, your opportunities to then go seek investment improve. And what I'm hoping happens is that because things have slowed down in terms of just day-to-day business activities, that maybe those who are the accredited investors are, they're sitting on more cash than maybe they had a year ago or so or two, and maybe they're going to start thinking about what they want to do with that and getting a little bit more aggressive than they have in the past. That would be fabulous. The other thing that's happened that I think is worth mentioning is Hofstra University actually has an entrepreneurship program for students, as well as they run an incubator called Idea Hub, which has any kind of stuff. You can become eligible whether you're a student or you're an adult, you know, just coming up with a new idea and you need a place to get mentoring and cultivate it. You know, that's a great program as well. And I'm starting to see more activities like that between what's going on at Stony Brook incubators and now with the Hofstra program. There's stuff at NYIT that's starting to happen. And as long as they're bringing in not only for student benefit, but for those outside of the university campus who are just entrepreneurs and need a place to go, those are all really great pathways into ultimately getting some kind of investment typically from an angel investor or a seed investor.
So what does it look like when I look at LaunchPad? You have what, 30 different companies that are plugged in there?
Yeah, they are it's interesting. For the most part, they are growing organically. They're not even seeking investment anymore. The first couple of years, we had a lot of activity that way. And what evolved was when we started doing more and more of our pitch nights and doing more networking around investment, it was kind of interesting. I was getting a lot of startups from outside of, you know, the LaunchPad tenant base, but just in the ecosystem itself. And that's one of the things that separates us from a lot of other locations is, you know, we don't put up barriers to entry because you're not a tenant. You know, we look for great ideas. We look for entrepreneurs. We look for people who want to work hard and try to succeed, and we can give them a place to do that in. You know, we don't, you know, in whatever way that is, as a tenant or just attending events or providing services to our tenants and others in the network. There's no barriers to entry with us, and that makes a big difference. So we've seen a growth external to LaunchPad tenants. LaunchPad tenants themselves are the ones who have been here with us for a long time. They're doing pretty well. I just got today one of my tenants, Ascender Studios, a web design and development firm. They just threw me 2 job openings that they need filled and asked if I would help them market it because their business in the last 3 months has increased dramatically. And they've never taken a dime of investment. It's all been organic growth, and they're a company of about 30 people now between Brooklyn, New Jersey, and out here.
That's impressive. I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to the dream team of technology professionals, including Tyler and the Mano brothers, and that are the sort of the anchor of the LaunchPad. And this is eGifter. Yeah, and these folks are always there to help, help give guidance to some of the younger folks that are coming in to the launch.
They're a good example of a technology company that has found a way to thrive during the pandemic because they're in the e-commerce space, the digital gift card space. And as retailers, this is an example of how a company can actually continue to grow in a crisis like this. As retailers were shutting down, they had to rely on online sales, and many of them were not equipped to do that. Even if they had a nice website, they didn't have really much of a payment process. They had no way to send out gift cards to people. That became a huge opportunity for them, and I believe they've done quite well. So there's an example of a technology company that has actually found a way to thrive.
Yeah, I'm curious, Peter, if you think there's going to be a shift. So we know there are trillions of dollars sitting on the sideline right now waiting to be invested, right? Because there's tons of money. I'm curious if you think there's going to be a shift for there being more private equity plays into startups or early stage companies going forward, or do you think people are just going to be much more conservative with their dollars as we sort of ramble through this?
Well, I think there's a little bit of both going on out there. I think people are looking at their portfolios and maybe slicing a piece of it and saying this slice of my pizza pie can go towards aggressive growth in the startup or entrepreneurial backing kind of venture capital kind of thing. But for most people, I suspect they need their capital to give them a return so they can live the lifestyle that they've grown accustomed to, pre-retirees and retirees. So it's it's interesting. I think we will see a dichotomy between some of the knowledge workers who have done well during this pandemic, who might want to double down, if you will, and invest some of that capital in new startups and new venture programs. But I do worry that the zero interest rate environment has a substantial impact on savers and those who need income.
Yeah, and let me just ask another question, Peter, because this is what sort of frustrates me, especially having been here on Long Island and watching so many great ideas and so many great startups try to get a foothold here on Long Island and no capital, right? And people will say, well, it's just too risky. But when I look at some of these stocks right now being traded on the public markets with PEs as high as they are, it seems there's just as much risk in those companies as there are in these startups. Isn't that right?
Spot on, counselor. I mean, really spot on. And it's not PEs, Joe. It's price to sales. These companies, especially the cloud stocks, are trading at 30, 40 times sales. It's unfathomable, and it's off the charts, and it's not like anything we've seen before. And yet the stocks keep going higher and people keep on buying them. I think there you have the non-frictionless ability to push a button on your phone and sell. That's the difference. When you're investing in a company, you're not able to do that. You're locked in, it's harder, it feels comfortable. But if you know you have the frictionless ability to dial up your account on your phone and say sell in 30 seconds, 3 seconds later, you're out. It gives people the feeling that, okay, I'll play. And that's what they're doing. It's a casinofication of the markets, and it worries me.
Yeah, I'm a different guy. I want to be able to call up Michael and say, hey man, how's it going? How are sales looking? What can I do to help you? You ain't gonna get that.
Correct. You're an investor, Joseph. That's the difference. Yeah.
And I think we need to educate investors, not traders, not gamblers, investors, in the value of having such immediate access and ability to sit down and talk to people that are actually running the business, right? I mean, that's a very big important part of,
and helping them to develop that business through your own contacts and your own knowledge ability. That's the double win. So now not only you are investing in these companies, but you're helping to move them forward.
Yeah. So Michael, let's talk about your Fitbit for dogs, right? I find that to be an incredibly important idea. So dogs in America are much more popular than people in America right now. That is for sure. People want to do everything for their dogs, and I find it really, really interesting and unique because you're right. We don't know what's distressing them. We can't understand the bark. We can't understand the whimper. So what gave you the idea to create that? And then how did you move that from idea to marketable?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I could talk about dogs for hours, so happy to talk about this. Firstly, here's a fun fact. When I first started working on FitBark, one astounding stat was in America, US, we spend more money Halloween for dog costumes than we spend on our kids. So that is an astounding stat for me. But when we first started, it started off as a competition between me and my friend. We were kind of like the early guys in the Fitbit, wearing Nike Fuel Band. It was the quantified self movement. It was all about how many steps did you take today? How many stairs did you take? It was kind of like a competition, and it was kind of fun. But at the end of the day, I didn't need a device to tell me how lazy I was, that I didn't go to the gym, that I didn't walk enough. But my friend and I, who ended up being my co-founder in FitBark, he was an MIT engineer. He and I had a competition for a few weeks all about like who can drive the most, steps and walk the most calories. And at the end of the week, that guy was gonna buy dinner. So throughout the whole week, I was doing pretty well. And then until one day I saw his numbers just spike up like a roller coaster going uphill. And I was like, what happened? And I found out he basically strapped his Fitbit onto his golden retriever, had him run around Central Park. So that's where kind of, as cliche as it is, that's kind of where the light bulb hit. We were like, wow, the dog is amazing, because I I'm at the moment he told me he put out his dog, I was like, wait, how many steps does my dog take? I have a much smaller dog, but I wanted to know all about him, and that's kind of where the fruition of the idea came forth. We didn't know what we were doing. We were like a bunch of scrappy entrepreneurs. I just had my startup called matchpuppy.com. We were raised a ton of money, got on Conan O'Brien Tonight Show. This is like the match.com for dogs, but I ended up actually pivoting that and taking some of the learnings there and then put it into this venture, FitBark. And then when we first started, we launched a Kickstarter campaign. So again, as I usually share with the startups that I work with, that the entrepreneurs that I work with, is to reach out to your communities. You really want to have a strong community in today's world when you're launching a product and a startup. So we tapped into our friends, we tapped into our communities, and we were able to raise the initial funding we needed from Kickstarter. And then from Kickstarter, we basically, as any entrepreneur in today's world knows, we just kind of kept the ball rolling. Was not as easy, it was not as smooth, but we basically built momentum, and then we got our product into Techstars, the accelerator program I was talking about earlier. And then they were kind of like the early investors in what we did. And it eventually got Sprint, the telecom company, to invest into us, moving us from New York City to Kansas City, Missouri, where, it's the animal health capital of the world. So long story short, it's building the FitBark company was really a journey of just learning as we went along and receiving as much help on the way. Our communities, even raising money from them and getting them to be our early customers, getting feedback from them, and then just getting folks to back us. It was really it.
Yeah, it was really great. That's really super exciting experience for you to have. All of that, making money is fun, but getting that experience is a long-term investment in yourself. Phil, we're running down on time, Phil, but I also want to talk about another hat that you wear at the Composite Prototyping Center in Plainview. I had an opportunity to tour that facility. It's incredibly impressive, and it's again one of those things here on Long Island that if we're not talking about it, people don't know it's here. So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell us all the great stuff going on there.
Yeah, so my earlier conversation about injecting myself into the supply chain opportunities for offshore wind is on behalf of the Composite Prototyping Center. So this is how worlds collide, right? And you got to pay attention to what's going on because you can miss opportunities in a heartbeat. The Composite Center represents, for the entire Northeast, actually, the only approved research center for composites in the Northeast, and that means we have a bunch of talented engineers and others who grew up out of Grumman and these other the defense industries and worked with these advanced materials and have to create a center to focus on that. So we're actually transitioning the whole operation. We're actually, tomorrow is an auction of all the equipment in the Composite Center. We're selling all that big stuff that you saw. We had ovens that you could drive a school bus into. We have robots that can do carbon fiber placement and build fuselages for aircraft. All that stuff is going, and we're coming up on the other side in a new mission as a workforce development focused nonprofit with an expertise in composite manufacturing. So I saw this offshore wind conversation happening. No, the manufacturers couldn't, or I was hearing, just had no clue how to get in on the action, right? So I kind of stepped up and said, all right, I'll try to figure that out. Turns out the labor unions are also trying to figure it out. So working with the Long Island Federation of Labor, I'm representing the opportunity for manufacturers to get into component part manufacturing for these offshore farms for the turbines and everything. But specifically, I want them to look at how they can start migrating away from metals and into composites. So we're going to become an advocacy organization for the growth of composite manufacturing, which is, everything always ties back to Stony Brook. I don't know what it is, Michael, but but I'm in partnership with a number of professors there, and we're applying for Department of Defense and Department of Energy grants, National Science Foundation grants, all to start doing more advanced research in areas like carbon fiber and polymers and these amazing materials that coat hypersonic jets and supersonic jets and submarines and you name it. So the Composite Center is going to be changing starting in 2021, but just changing from going from a huge, massive site to a very focused training and certification center to build a workforce and to represent the growth of composites in our region, which is a really great opportunity for, especially in areas like defense and Navy and Air Force. So it's pretty exciting stuff, actually. It's been an amazing experience.
Yeah, it's really super exciting. I mean, if you think about, when I was growing up here on Long Island and everything was Grumman, Fairchild based, there was nothing else. If you think over the last 40 years, how much Long Island has truly pivoted itself as an island. We squawk about it and we say, oh, there's fiefdoms and we're not making any progress, but you just look at the developments we've had over the last 40 years. It's really amazing.
I mean, we've got, amazing companies that spun out of that era. We have thousands of manufacturing companies on Long Island. And on any given year, we've got over 2,500 to 3,000 job openings, right? So, it's an awareness thing also that's really important.
And it's entrepreneurship. Look, one of the greatest assets a company can have is its entrepreneurial spirit and abilities. And we don't put that on the balance sheet anywhere.
Yeah.
But it's really something that's incredibly critical. And I'll tell you, I'm so inspired. My entire career here has been because of you guys like you who keep me inspired. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I create nothing, right? You guys are the people that create everything.
You save our butts is what you do.
Well, I try anyway, right? I try to do that. But it's really great and inspiring to spend some time with you guys and hear about all the amazing things that you're up to. It's a beacon of hope in a dimly lit time right now that we're going through. So love to give our guests the last word. Always has to be positive and inspiring, Phil. So inspire us here in your final comments.
Well, I mean, out of the old saying, out of adversity, spawns opportunity, and I think this is one of those eras that we're in now, where we're coming out of something just totally unforeseen and unknowable. And we're not out of it yet, but we will figure this out. And while this is happening, I've seen so many interesting pivots and opportunities taken advantage of as our normal world stopped. It's actually I'm quite optimistic that we're going to get through this, and we're going to be in a boom, maybe of a different sort of boom that we've ever been in before, but it's going to be some sort of an industrial boom that's going to be good for the region.
Yep, I agree. Michael, final thoughts?
Yeah, just adding on to what Phil was saying right now, boom and bust, like laws of gravity, whatever goes down comes back up. I actually think that, the human spirit and the entrepreneur spirit is probably now more present in all of us than ever, given the current climate, economic climate and such. So I think ultimately what I've been advising folks, and I'm trying to do it myself, is just to be as down to the basics as you can, which is, I think for me, 3 things as an entrepreneur or as an entrepreneur in the community is to, help others as often as you can and as much as you can, and just lend a hand, because that is ultimately what makes the world go round. As an entrepreneur, if you're building a new company, a new startup, I would say be product focused, be obsessed with product. Even if you're a B2B business, you need to be obsessed with how the user experience is really going to operate, because in today's world, all these products out there, you really need to establish your product as the differentiator. And then third, I would just say, don't be afraid to fail fast, because that's where you learn the most. You pick yourself back up and you get closer to what your success is going to be. So don't be afraid to fail fast. And then lastly, if I can, I'm going to do 2 quick plugins about actually some amazing work we're doing at the SVU. So one program that I'm actually helping run is the Sbdc's Tech Enhancement Program. Many of you may have heard of this, but it's a great program where we partner with the Suffolk County Ford Recovery Program, along with Stony Brook's College of Business and Engineering. We basically took in volunteer students from the College of Engineering and College of Business, and we're making student teams where we're helping Suffolk County, real Suffolk County businesses, restaurants, mom and pop shops, retail locations, contractors, helping them survive right now. This is literally happening as we speak. Our student teams have clients that are they're helping them out right now, like revamping their sites, making sure sites are mobile friendly, helping restaurants manage, multiple delivery services, like all your Uber Eats, your Postmates of the world, your DoorDashes, helping retail shops, making sure that they're able to accept contactless payments. All these things we're basically helping through this program, this Tech Enhancement Program. So whoever's listening in, it's a free program as long as you're a Suffolk County, your business is based in Suffolk County. So definitely reach out to us, look us up, reach out to me. My email is michael.chang.1@stonybrook.edu. And then lastly, I would just say, thank you so much for having me. This is amazing what you guys do, Joe and Peter and everybody at the team here. So keep doing what you're doing, because I think this is one of the key components about law and tech and law and community getting stronger and better than ever, is guys like you guys having us on board, sharing our thoughts, and just amplifying what needs to be heard. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, great stuff. Peter, final thoughts?
I'm just jazzed that we have this great folks in the technology sector here on Long Island. I've often thought that that's one of our major opportunities for growth going forward. And I think this collaborative nature of these organizations and groups are going to continue us on that good glide path.
Yep. For me, I like to quote Winston Churchill in The Darkest Days, who said, if you're going through hell, keep going, right? And that's what we do as entrepreneurs, as business owners. We just gotta keep going. I want to thank everybody. Phil and Michael, I want to thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
For our viewers, next week, Peter and I are going to do sort of a recap, and then we're going to take a little break and let the election blow over, and whatever nonsense is going to go on there, we got to let that all blow over until we pick this back up again. But really great job, guys. Appreciate all the support, and if you need anything, we're here. So have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.